Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tell us about your town in the comments. We're really interested. Trenches came into widespread use in 1914 as a way for soldiers to protect themselves against the firepower of modern weaponry. Over time, they developed into huge networks. As shown here, trenches were given names to help identify them. Sometimes these names related to familiar places from home. Water and mud could be a problem in the trenches, particularly in the autumn and winter months. Wooden duck boards were used to line the bottom of trenches, and the sides were reinforced with sandbags. Trench conditions varied across different fronts. In Gallipoli in Turkey, mud was less of a problem, but rocky and mountainous terrain posed different challenges. Soldiers also suffered from the heat. Hot food was not supplied to front-line soldiers until late 1915, and even then it wasn't always a regular occurrence. Troops in the front line had a repetitive diet of tinned food, sometimes served cold. This photograph shows an infantryman on sentry duty, whilst some of his comrades snatch a few moments of sleep behind him. They are in what was previously a German trench, at Auvers-le-Boissel on the Somme, July 1916. When able to rest, soldiers in front-line trenches would try and shelter from the elements in dugouts. These varied from deep underground shelters to small hollows in the side of trenches, as shown here. For Canadian soldiers, sleeping and writing letters in the trenches near Willerville. Nighttime in the trenches was often a busy time. Wiring parties, fatigue parties and raiding parties would all be sent out at night. Most activity in front-line trenches took place at night under cover of darkness. During daytime, soldiers would try to get some rest, but were usually only able to sleep for a few hours at a time. Australian troops, men of the 10th Brigade, who had been in the front-line trenches for several days, have a foot inspection at Dragon Farm. Soldiers in wet and muddy trenches were at risk from trench foot, caused by continually wearing tight, cold and wet boots. If untreated, trench foot could lead to gangrene, but it could be prevented by regular changes of socks and foot inspections, as shown here. British soldiers bathing near Avelli Wood, August 1916. When soldiers were out of front-line trenches, and behind the lines, they would be able to enjoy it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tell us about your town in the comments. We're really interested. A full night's sleep, and a hot bath. There were also laundries, where they could have their uniforms washed. An officer of the 10th Battalion, Cameronians, Scottish Rifles, leads the way out of a sap, and is being followed by the party. Note shells bursting in the distance. Nearer us, the 24th of March 1917. Life in the front line always carried an element of danger. The threat could be from snipers, shellfire, or from taking part in a trench raid, or a major offensive. This rare photograph shows the moment when the first men go over the top during a raid in spring 1917. In addition to the materials at hand, wood, fabric, these creations are essentially made from elements salvaged from the battlefield, at the risk and peril of the soldiers, who expose themselves to enemy bullets. The search for rare raw materials also takes place in abandoned houses, destroyed towns and cities, or on prisoners and the dead, who are stripped of everything of use. Human Statue of Liberty. 18,000 officers and men were required for this living Statue of Liberty at Camp Dodge, Des Moines, Iowa, September 1918. The 1916 photograph, Gas Attack, illustrates the horror of the fighting at the Battle of Verdun. It shows soldiers wearing gas masks struggling through a devastated landscape shrouded in toxic clouds. The image illustrates the widespread use of chemical weapons during the First World War, and the determination of the combatants in the face of inhumane conditions. The photograph in question is actually a still from the 1928 fiction film, Verdun, Visions d'Histoire, directed by Leon Poirier. This image depicts a French grenadier struck by a bullet during an assault, while his comrades continue their advance in the background. Although this scene appears to capture an authentic moment from World War I, it is a cinematic reenactment intended to illustrate the violence and dynamics of the battles of that era. The photograph, entitled Verrier, Soldat Aviateur, 1915, illustrates the transformation of aviators into the new heroes of the First World War. It shows Soldier Verrier posing proudly in front of his plane, symbolizing the emergence of military aviation and the perception of pilots as the knights of the air of the era. The photograph labeled 111SC 29833, taken on October 10, 1918, captures a poignant moment during World War I in the Argonne Forest, France. In this image, 2 wounded soldiers are seen receiving refreshments from an American Red Cross outpost station at Châtelchery. This scene exemplifies the vital role played by the Red Cross in providing frontline support and comfort to injured servicemen during the war. Unwritten record. This photograph, taken on September 25, 1918, shows the trenches that American soldiers began digging on the first night of the St. Mihiel offensive. However, they quickly advanced a further 5 kilometers, leaving Benny visible in the center, in the distance. This image testifies to the speed and efficiency of the American advance during this decisive operation of the First World War. Photograph, taken on October 4, 1918, shows Sergeant Kuka C. Carlson of HQ Company, 305 Infantry Regiment, accompanied by several well-fed soldiers. In the foreground, a display of rations is laid out, illustrating the provisions available to the troops. This scene takes place at L'Abri du Crochet, in the Ardennes, France, during World War I. Archives catalog the 305 Infantry Regiment was part of the 77 Division, composed mainly of soldiers originally from New York. Their presence at the Abri du Crochet in October 1918 was part of the Allied offensives to push back German forces on the Western Front. The photograph, taken on April 19, 1918, at Camp Kearney in San Diego, California, showcases soldiers from the 40th Division displaying various gas masks used during World War I. From left to right, the masks are American, British, French, and German. Unwritten record. During World War I, the introduction of chemical warfare necessitated the rapid development and deployment of protective equipment. Each nation developed its own gas masks to safeguard soldiers from harmful agents like chlorine and mustard gas. The American mask, for instance, was known for its box respirator design, while the British small box respirator became renowned for its effectiveness. The French employed the M2 gas mask, and the Germans used various models, including the leather Schutzmask. The photograph labeled 111SC 44508, taken on December 28, 1918, depicts the naval crew of 400 men and officers from the USS Tenadors after the ship was wrecked off the Isle d'Yeu, France. The USS Tenadors, originally built in 1913 for the United Fruit Company, was repurposed as a transport ship by the U.S. Navy during World War I. On that fateful night, the ship ran aground in heavy fog near the island. Fortunately, all personnel on board were safely rescued. The ship, however, could not be salvaged, and was subsequently lost to the sea. The photograph with National Archives, taken on October 25, 1944, in Tacloban, Leyte Island, Philippines, captures the aftermath of a Japanese air raid during World War II. In the image, soldiers are inspecting a bomb crater on the dock, resulting from a near miss on a Liberty ship visible in the background. The ship's officers are examining shrapnel holes that have peppered the vessel's structure. This damage was inflicted by 3 Japanese raiding planes, with only 2 bombs striking land. Liberty ships were mass-produced cargo vessels built by the United States during World War II to transport war supplies and personnel. Their simple design and rapid construction were crucial in supporting Allied operations across various theaters of the war. The photograph with National Archives captures workers at the Cohen, Endel & Co. factory in New York, diligently crafting U.S. Army overcoats during World War I. The image focuses on employees making buttonholes and sewing on buttons, highlighting the meticulous craftsmanship involved in producing military garments. Cohen, Endel & Co., a prominent New York-based clothing manufacturer, played a significant role in supplying uniforms and overcoats to the U.S. military during the early 20th century. Their contributions were vital in outfitting American soldiers with essential cold weather gear, ensuring troops were adequately protected in various climates. The photograph with National Archives at 178,140,810, taken during World War II, features Sergeant Nolan Johnson from Oakwood, Texas, and Private First Class Fred D. Bulney from Salem, Pennsylvania, operating a radio within a foxhole. They were part of the 93rd Infantry Division, the first African American infantry division to see combat in the South Pacific. This image was captured along the Numa Numa Trail, on Bougainville Island in the Solomon Islands, as they prepared for an attack. The 93rd Infantry Division, activated on May 15, 1942, was a segregated unit composed primarily of African American soldiers. The division's insignia featured a blue French Adrian helmet, symbolizing its lineage from World War